Those who have ears ought to hear. That line from our gospel today from Jesus in the Gospel of St. Matthew is, I think, a challenge to many of us in the 21st century. Because rarely do we listen, let alone hear what it is that God is seeking to tell us. Growing up, we learn how to listen. We learn in grade school what is right from wrong. We learn from our parents what we're supposed to do and what we're not supposed to do many times. But rarely are we actually hearing what it is that they're telling us. Occasionally we listen to the words, but rarely do we actually understand what they're trying to tell us. How many times do our parents have to tell us to do something before we do it? Or how many times does your spouse have to ask you something before you actually do it? Have you brushed your teeth? Oh, yes, Mommy, I've brushed my teeth. Have you really brushed your teeth? Oh, yes, Mommy, I have. Let me see them. I'll be right back. How many times do we fall into that same trap over and over and over, yet we think that we know what's best, not just with our family, but also with God? And so Jesus then uses these parables, these stories, to teach us a lesson, because sometimes we don't get it the first time, or the second time, or the 15 millionth time. It's like one of those, okay, everybody take your right hand, put it over your right ear, and listen. Make sure it stays in there and doesn't go in one ear and out the other. To actually hear the voice of God is something that takes intentionality. And so it's no surprise then that many people, when they come to church, say, Father, I don't understand why we have to go to Mass. Language is so important. Growing up, I was told, Danny, you don't have to go to Mass. You get to go to Mass. It's like, okay, Mom, come on. Stop like talking in semantics here. No, I have to go to Mass. I'm being forced to go to Mass because I don't want to be here. Mass is boring. The homily is boring. The priest goes on and on and on and on. We chuckle because that's me now. And what's interesting is the part of Mass that most people struggle with isn't the music, isn't the homily, but is the most important part of the liturgy. As a kid, what is the most boring part of Mass? Sometimes the homily, depending on who's preaching, what they're preaching about. But more often than not, if you ask a child what the most boring part of Mass is, they'll say that time when Father's behind the altar, the Eucharistic prayer. For most of our children, and sometimes for us as adults, the most boring part of Mass isn't the homily, isn't the music, but is the most important part of Mass, where we enter into the moment of the Last Supper and the ritualistic sacrifice of Jesus for our sins, where the bread and wine truly become the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Christ. That's the most boring part of Mass. It's the most eternally awesome part of Mass, but if we don't understand what we're doing and why we're doing it, it makes sense that it becomes boring for many of us. We have to be intentional about our faith, but also intentional about why we are here. Well, Father, to be honest, I'm here because I don't want to go to hell this week. Well, that's a good place to start. Good place to start. I mean, how many times do we grow up hearing about C&E Catholics? You know what I'm talking about when I say C&E Catholics? Christmas and Easter. Churches are full on Christmas and Easter, right? Well, nowadays in the 21st century, we've gone from C&E, twice-a-year Catholics, to PACE Catholics. P-A-C-E. Palm Sunday, Ash Wednesday, Christmas and Easter. It's amazing that one of the days throughout the year that is not a holy day of obligation, you will find more people in church on that day than almost any other day of the year. Do you know what day that is? Ash Wednesday. Why? Because everybody knows if you didn't go to Mass. Because you don't have the ashes on your forehead. In fact, in many of our non-Catholic Christian churches, they have begun to adopt this as well, so much so that it's on social media, and people will put on there the hashtag #AshTag. Modernity drives me crazy sometimes. But hey, if it gets us into church, it's a place to start. But if we aren't asking ourselves the why, we're really missing what it is God is seeking for us to hear. If the first time that we listen to the readings is at Mass, don't be surprised if we don't understand what is being said from the pulpit. Not just in the homily, but in the readings. So one of the best things that we can do to prepare ourselves to grow and learn and truly hear and understand is to read the readings beforehand. But Father, I don't have time. But Father, I don't know where to find the readings. Well, they're in the books right in front of you. Every pew has them. But Father, you don't understand how difficult it is for me to get myself, let alone my kids here on time, let alone early. Okay, well, how many days are there in the week? 7. Okay, can you choose one of those days to read it beforehand? Preparing beforehand? What is this, the SATs? I mean, come on, Lord. What's going on here? But Father, I don't know where to find the readings. Well, there's a website called usccb.org, United States Council of Catholic Bishops. Every day, they've got the daily Mass readings on there. En English y también en español. Entonces, no excusos. So we don't have any excuses whether English is our first language or Spanish is our first language. We have the opportunity to prepare. But Father, what if I don't want to? Well, that's your choice. But don't be upset when you come to Mass and you're like, Father, I don't get anything out of Mass. Father, I feel like I'm not being fed at Mass. You've heard that before? I've said that before. What's interesting is, as Catholics, we receive the ultimate food. Christ in John 6 says to his disciples, unless you eat of the flesh of the Son of Man and drink of his blood, you have no life within you. Remember when your ancestors ate manna in the desert, which was the food from heaven, that they ate and still hungered and still thirst. But the bread that I shall give is my flesh for the life of the world. You will never hunger, you will never thirst. But Father, I'm hungry. Well, just as kids many times were hungry for junk food, so too do we become hungry for junk food when it comes to the church. But Father, I'm not entertained. Well, this isn't the Colosseum in Rome. Every time I hear that phrase, Father, I'm not entertained, I think of the great scene from Russell Crowe in Gladiator. Are you not entertained? Because if you aren't entertained, my response is, well, good, because that's not my job. My job isn't to entertain you. My job is to instruct you in how we are to continue to grow as people of faith, which means it's going to be difficult at times. It means that we're actually going to have to change how we are if we actually want to grow into something different. So I've got a challenge for us this week. If you get here at 10:29:29, next week, get here at 10:28:29. Only asking for a minute earlier. To be able to kind of shut out the problems that are going on outside of these doors and these walls. And to be able to kind of center yourself in the presence of God. Because if we don't be intentional, if we aren't intentional about our relationship with God, about our time here in this place, there is 0% chance that we will take the Lord out with us when we go in peace. But many times we get distracted. We become like that flash in the pan type of faith that Christ was talking about in the parable today, when he talked about the sower throwing the seeds on the path. He's not talking about the path of righteousness. He's talking about the walking path. If you've ever seen seeds on a walking path, rarely does any fruit come from it. Weeds will come from it. We see it all the time on the concrete. But rarely is any good, true, holy fruit born from it. But how many times Is that how we are in the faith? I'll never forget my first year as a priest. When I got ordained, I was at my heaviest weight ever, just about 270 pounds. And so the priest nurse, for my ordination present, she got me a Fitbit. Basically, she said, "Father, we love you. Stop being so fat and lazy. Do something about it." Now, she didn't say that. That's kind of how I interpreted it. And so for me, it's like, you know what? I'm at a seminary, 8 years of seminary, 11 years of college total. I am ready. I'm rearing. Let's go. And so for about 117 days straight, I hit at least 10,000 steps. Lost 50 pounds in a year. I was so proud of myself. Until twisted my ankle one day walking. Since then, 7 years ago, I have yet to get more than 10 days in a row with 10,000 steps. When it comes to my health, many times I have that flash in the pan type of faith and relationship with myself. But sometimes I have that relationship with God as well. We'll go on these awesome retreats or have this great homily or have this great come to Jesus moment. And we're like, yeah, I'm on fire for the faith. And then we hit an obstacle and we're like, I was on fire for the faith, but now I feel like I'm not being fed anymore and I don't get anything from this, so what's the point in doing this in the first place? Satan begins to put doubt in our hearts and doubt in our lives. And so we aren't being intentional. Many of you know this, but many of you may not know, I struggle with ADHD. I am distracted 99% of the time. So me being up here, you guys have the easy job. You get to see this. I don't know if that's easy, but you guys have to look at this. I have to look at each and every one of you, which is awesome, except that, man, there's 180 of you guys doing 180 different things. If there's a baby, there's always a baby, someone behind them playing with them or talking to them, or someone's sneezing or someone's coughing or someone's getting up and going to the bathroom, coming back from the bathroom, all of these things. I'm like, so sometimes for me to focus, I have to deprive myself of the sense of sight. You probably notice it sometimes during Mass. I will sit up there, or even in the middle of prayers, I will close my eyes. I do so as an intentional forcing of myself to focus on what's going on. And I learned this about 10, 15 years ago because I was very distracted during the homily. Because, well, I'm human. And, well, I was fat, and I still am, and I got hungry a lot. And typically, Mass would be at 11:30 when I was growing up, and it's like, 11:30, feed me, was all I could think of. And so I was like, all right, Father, come on, man. I'm hungry. The Baptists are going to beat me to IHOP. Let's go. Come on. Now, we don't have IHOP here. We don't have to worry about that. But that was one of my concerns growing up. And so I was so focused on things that didn't really matter that I missed a lot out of what I was actually participating in. And so I went to spiritual direction, and my spiritual director said, try this. During the readings, during the homily, close your eyes. Within 5 seconds, my dad elbowed me. Wake up. I'm not asleep. I'm trying to focus. So I found it really funny. Last month when Deacon was preaching, I had no less than 6 people come up to me and say, Father, you fell asleep during Deacon's homily. We saw you with your eyes closed. I said, no. I did not fall asleep. Father, you're going to lie to us at church? Come on, man. No. You'll know when I'm falling asleep, because when I'm not falling asleep and I'm trying to be intentional, I'll take my glasses off and hold them in my hand. Because if you have glasses, you know it is nearly impossible to fall asleep with them still in your hands without them drooping or without them beginning to fall. And so for me, if I'm trying to fall asleep or like, all right, whatever's going to happen is going to happen, I'll take my glasses off and set them down. But I take them off and put them in my hand to help me focus, because it allows me, with that sensory deprivation of what I'm seeing, to truly listen with the hope of hearing. In fact, this morning at Mass and Sayer, had my eyes closed during the psalm and during the person walking up for the second reading. And it's like, someone's walking from over here. I bet you that's Deb Hudson. She got up to the ambo, a reading. Deb Hudson. I was able to focus in. This morning, I was sitting in the sacristy, and I was kind of sitting there, resting my eyes. I was actually sleeping. Resting my eyes, and I hear someone walk in. It's like, hey, Dennis, is that you? It's like, do I have that familiar of a cough? That familiar of a sound? Everybody does when you focus in on it. And so I heard Dennis McCree coming in. He's like, that's impressive, Father. I said, no, I practiced this. But just like with everything else in our lives, the more we practice it, the more intentional about it we are, the easier it becomes to hone that skill. So if you're bored at Mass, practice preparing yourself for what the Lord wants to give you. He wants to give you His love. He wants you to be in peace. That yes, we are going to have obstacles that are trying to choke us out, like those thorns of a rose bush. But with God, there's no such thing as being overwhelmed, because God is enough. We aren't. We can't handle everything by ourselves. There's that lie of an old saying that says, God will never give you more than you can handle. That's a lie. God sometimes purposely gives you more than you can handle, so you realize you can't do it by yourself, and you ask for His assistance, or you rely on other members of the family of faith to help be your Simon, to help carry your cross. And so no matter where we are at this moment, we have the opportunity to allow the seeds of faith to bear much fruit in the rich soil in our hearts if we fertilize it, if we nurture it. The grass is greener on the other side. No, the grass is greener where you water it, or where you spray paint it, depending on what you're working on. Either way, if you're watering it or you're spray painting it, you're focusing on it. You're being intentional about it. And that's where we can see that growth. So be intentional, my brothers and sisters. Allow the Lord to fertilize the soil within your heart, so that each and every one of us, at some point this week, can truly seek to bear 30 or 60 or 100-fold of the good fruits of the love of God.